After we set up column H to column K, we go into the subroutine starting on line 5. Line 5 is just copying the value of I into X. I has a value of 2. Now X also has the same value. Line 6 is adding 1 to the value of I. I goes from 2 to 3. Okay? There's no problem changing the value of a bi-val parameter because it has its own values. So you can definitely change it the way that I am doing it right now. We move on to line 7. Line 7 is just a simple comparison. I is less than bar A bar is, well, is it true or is it false? What is bar A bar anyway? Bar A bar is asking what is the number of elements of array A, which is passed by reference. Well, I don't know because A is an alias of somebody else. But A is an alias of column B, column C to column G, which is array B. Array B has 5 elements. So as a result, bar A bar is also 5. Okay? Is that okay so far? Now bar A bar is 5, I is 3 at this point. 3 is less than 5 is true. We move on to line 8. Line 8 is, the difficult part of line 8 is to say, okay, which two elements am I comparing to? Okay, the left-hand side specifies A bracket I. I has a value of 3, and A basically is an alias of array B. So when I talk about A bracket 3, I'm actually talking about B bracket 3. B bracket 3 has a value of 7. The other one is A bracket X. X has a value of 2. So when I talk about A bracket X, I'm actually talking about B bracket 2, which has a value of 3. 7 is greater than 3 is true. Okay? So we just have to say that. Okay? Copy the entire thing and say it is true. If that is true, I have no choice but to go to line 9. Line 9 is copying the value of I to X. I has a value of 3, and X now has a value of 3 as well. Then I get out of the conditional statement. I go to line 11. Line 11 is just adding 1 to I. I goes from 3 to 4. Then I have to go back to line 7. Because this is a pre-checking loop. This is not a conditional statement. It is a pre-checking loop. I go back to line 7. And on line 7, I evaluate the same condition that I have evaluated before. I is 4, bar A bar is basically bar B bar, and bar B bar is 5. 4 is less than 5 is true. I go to line 8 again. Line 8, once again, is comparing A bracket I to A bracket X. But I has changed. In other words, this time I'm comparing A bracket 4, which is B bracket 4, to A bracket 3, which is the same as B bracket 3. See, no, I messed up. Okay, A bracket 3 is B bracket 3, which has a value of 7. So the question is 1 greater than 7? Okay, the answer is false. I skipped over the rest of the conditional statement. I go to line 11. Line 11 is just adding 1 to I. I goes from 4 to 5. And then what do I do? I'm at the end of a while loop. Go back to line 7, reevaluate the condition. I this time is 5. Bar A bar is the same as bar B bar, which is also 5. 5 is less than 5 is false. I get out of the loop. I get to line 13. Line 13 is just returning the value of X. X at this point has a value of 3, so I'm going to return it. And returning means I look up the rightmost return info cell, I copy, I paste, and I change the question mark to whatever value I'm returning. What is it again? 3. Okay. And then we go to line 14. Line 14 is the end of this subroutine. They allocate all 4 columns that we have allocated before. And then we go to line 15 because return info tells me to go back to line 15. Line 15 tells me that it is just printing a value of 3. Okay, that's easy enough. Go ahead and print a value of 3, and then we are done. In other words, the only tricky part about this happened on line 15, passing an array in by reference. That's the only part that makes it tricky. Okay, do we have any questions about this? No questions? Okay. I think we are done with all the questions in the practice exam.
We didn't do 5.
Number 5 is something that we have seen already. I'm just reusing that one. So once again, just to re-illustrate, how to upload a file. Okay, just click it, go to the folder where the file is, double-click it, and you can click Save without submitting to be sure to upload the file. And once you upload the file, it should appear as a hyperlink. If you see this hyperlink, you can still click it to make sure that it is the file that you want to upload, especially when you have multiple versions of the same file. Then we can just move on to question number 5, and let me show you what 5 is. You guys still remember this one? Yeah. Yep.
Would it be possible to do the second half of question 3?
Yes, I can finish question number 3. Yep. Okay. So we don't have to do question 5? Yeah, question 5 is covered. Okay. So let's go ahead and deal with question number 3. Last time we finished everything, going back up, and since we have enough time today, I'll just go over that stuff again. And unfortunate for people who are not here, I have to use the whiteboard to show you the picture of the conditional statement, because that way it makes it easier to understand how we have alternative values. Because the tricky part of question number 3 is that it is not linear. It is not just one step before another step. Sometimes we have 2 branches going back to the same point. So what we want to do is to draw the picture that represents the logic of the program. We have one conditional statement, and then we have another conditional statement. They are sequential to each other, which means the out of one goes into the in of the other one. Is that part okay? Just the shape of the statements. Okay. So we'll start to add details to the picture here. This is x gets x plus 1. This is x gets x minus 3. Okay, just following the original pseudocode. And then we have the conditional branches. The first conditional branch is based on x mod 2 being 0. If it is true, we go this way. If it is false, we go the other way. Okay. The second one is based on the comparison of x to 30. If it is greater than 30, we go this way. If it is not greater than 30, we go the other way. So are we doing okay so far with the pictorial representation of the 2 conditional statements? And the question states that by the time we get to line 37, or by the time we get out of line 37, which is the exit of the second conditional statement, we say that by that time we know for sure that x has a value of 28. That means that at this point, we know x equals to 28. Right? That's the post condition of line 37. Well, between this point and, say, this point here, right after x gets x minus 3, there's nothing that can change the value of x, which means if x is 28 by the time we get to line 37, it means that by the time we finish line 36, it should also have a value of 28. That's one way. Okay? When we backtrack, that's one way to backtrack. But there's another way to backtrack. See, this is a branch, or it's a merge, but when you walk backwards, it becomes a branch. So the other way to get back is to say, oh, there's another way, because by the time we get back here, we also know that x is 28. Is that making any sense? Okay, because I could have come from either paths to get to this point. But since the only thing I say by the time we get to line 37 is that x equals to 28, that means regardless of which branch I took, in either case, x has to be 28. But now you have to be careful, because what makes you take the branch that is labeled false? If you're taking the branch that is labeled false, that means the condition has to be false, right? So the next question is it possible for x to be exactly 28 and be less than 30, be greater than 30 at the same time? It's not possible. Okay, so but that's okay. That's perfectly fine, because we are looking for exactly that, because to get to this branch, it is x has to be less than or equal to 30 and not be greater than 30. Is that making any sense? Because it is the false branch, okay? So it is false that x is greater than 30, which is fine, because 28 is exactly not greater than 30. So there's no conflict here. X can be 28 when we get to this point. If we know that x is 28 after subtracting 3 from x, can we say something about what x is before the subtraction?
Yeah, x is 31.
X is 31 at that point. Very good. So now you have to be careful again, because now the question is it consistent for x to be 38 at this point and be greater than 30 at the same time? Because I would not be taking the then branch unless x is greater than 30. Is it consistent? Yeah, it's okay. So everything is fine at this point. Now, when you take these two paths here and you merge them, at this point, what can we say? Well, can be one or the other, exactly. So at this point, our condition becomes x is 31 or x is 28. Okay? The V symbol stands for, disjunction. Are we doing okay so far? Now we can use exactly the same rationale and push this condition up even more. In other words, we can push it all the way up here and say, oh, by this time, we also know that x can be 31 or x can be 28. Because nothing happens between this point and this point. The x does not get changed between those 2 points. Okay? Later on, we'll find out that one of these is not possible, but at this point, we'll just say that they're both possible. And we can push it also up this path and say, oh, nothing happened between this point and this point. As a result, x can be 31 or x can be 28. But now we have a problem. We have a problem because we would not be taking this branch here unless x mod 2 equals to 0 is false. Okay? Now, x mod 2 equals to 0 is false is a really, really obscure way to say that x is odd. Okay? Because x mod 2 is the remainder of x divided by 2.
X is I.
Sorry?
X is I.
X is
Odd.
odd.
Oh, okay. Now I'm with you. Sorry.
Okay. So x is odd. Okay? In other words, we would not be taking this false branch unless we know that x is already odd. But if you look at these two alternatives, one is not odd. Okay? X equals to 28 means x is not odd. But I need both conditions to be true. I need this to be true as well as that to be true, or I need that to be false. I need x to be odd. So that means at this point, with this branch, I can cross this out. Okay? Because if x was 28 at the beginning, it would not have taken this branch. Is that making any sense? Okay. Okay, so let's work with the other side. Let's work with the left-hand side. If x is 31